Thank you for joining us today at Homestead for Life. Today we are making guava jelly. I was blessed with several bags of freshly frozen guavas, so we are going to make some jelly out of it today. So our first step is to get our canner and our jars ready. So we are water bathing this today. So we are going to get this heated up. We're just going to do slow cook and get our water, get our jars going. And then we're going to move over to the stove. We are going to boil our guava, bring it to a boil, and then reduce it back to a simmer with water. Crush it all up, get all the good flavors and everything in that water, strain it out, and make jelly. Very similar, actually, to the process we went through making mulberry jelly, which is still reigning champion of favorite jellies. So we'll see how this compares. I'm excited to try it. Let's go. All right, so we have approximately 3 pounds of guavas. I didn't thaw quite enough, so there's a very little bit that are still frozen, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna thaw pretty quickly in here. And we've got 6 cups of water. And our heat up on high. So once this starts heating up and these get a little softer, that's when the mashing starts. So it's gonna be a few minutes on that, of course. But once we heat it up to a boil, we're going to reduce it back down and simmer it covered. So we'll be back for that. All right, it is starting to boil. So we are going to crush up our guava a little bit here before we reduce the heat, cover it and simmer it. All right, I lied. I covered it to get it heated up faster. Cover it again and simmer it for those 5 minutes. But this potato masher is pretty handy. All right. We're going to reduce our heat down. I'm going to put that at like a 3. Cover it and let it simmer for 5 minutes. All right, it's been 5 minutes, so we are going to pour our juice, water, guava pieces into our strainer bag over a metal strainer. And hopefully get 4.5 cups of juice, because that is exactly and all we need for this recipe. It looks like I'm gonna have plenty. Plenty. So now I just gotta get the rest of the stuff out of the pot so I can use the pot for the rest of the recipe. All right. It'll fit in here. Okay, so once you have strained it out, you are going to take 4.5 cups and only 4.5 cups for this recipe. Otherwise, then you have to math out how much sugar you need, yada, yada, no fun. So 4.5 cups of juice. And to that 4.5 cups of juice, we are going to add 6 cups of sugar, because that's how jelly works. It's kind of crazy, right? And it's going to go back on the stove. Okay, and then we're going to add our Sure-Gel. We're going to get it up to an obnoxious rolling boil, the kind you can't just stir down. Then we're going to add our sugar. Let it boil hard for 1 minute and then into the jars. Okay, so I don't even need to squeeze this bag out. I need to find another tub to put under my strainer so I can get my exactly 4.5 cups. So hold on, I'll be right back. All right, so that, without squeezing my strainer bag at all, ended up with almost 6 cups. So we are going to do just 4.5 cups in here. Ooh, hot. Beware of splashes. Remember, you just had this simmering away. 3, 4. 5. and a half. All right, so we've got our 4.5 cups. We're gonna add a box of pectin, the Sure-Gel pectin. Stir that all up, and then we are going to bring this back to a boil. Hard rolling boil. And I always forget that I want to whisk for this. All right, so whisk a little too hard. You don't really want all the bubbles in the foam on top. You can add butter, a little bit of butter to kind of cut down on the foam that's going to end up forming at the top after you add your sugar and everything. Personal choice. I'm not going to, but you can do whatever you like to do with your own jelly. All right, so we are going to put this back on high and get it back to a boil. Okay. A step that I forgot, it's normally before the pectin and totally optional, is to put in a couple drops of food coloring, red food coloring in particular. So just a couple quick drops there. This is only for aesthetics because guava on its own is kind of like that funky, yellowy, greeny, not the funnest color. So this will have more of a like reddish pinkish tint to your jelly when it's all done. And we're boiling, so we're just going to let this continue to boil, and you can see the foam forming on top. We're going to let this continue to boil hard for a minute, and then we're going to add our sugar. Okay, so we've got our hard boil. That stirring will kind of reduce down, but not totally get rid of. So we are adding at 6.5 cups of sugar. That is so insane. Such an insane amount of sugar. Can't even wrap my brain around this. 6.5 cups of sugar to 4.5 cups of juice. Let's not talk about the nutritional value of this jelly. Holy smokes. But here we go. We're going to mix this all in. Once it comes back up to a boil, we're going to boil it for exactly 1 minute at a hard rolling boil. And then into the jars we go. So while we're counting down that 1 minute, we're going to grab our jars out of our canner. Okay, it is boiling, so we are going to keep stirring it for our 1 minute countdown. As you can see, it's getting pretty foamy on top. So we've got our spoon ready to scrape the top off, the foam off after we remove it from the heat. Okay, so countdown is on. 1 minute, and then we remove it from the heat. All right, we've removed it from the heat, and we are just going to skim this foam off the top here into our dirty sugar bowl. The foam doesn't hurt anything, okay? So you can leave it. It just doesn't look pretty on your finished jars. So it is absolutely optional, personal preference. But since I tend to gift out my jars to people, I don't want them to see foam on the top and think that it's mold or something crazy. Makes them question it a little bit more, right? What kind of gift is this? So just going to skim this off as best we can, and then we are going to pour it into our jars. Our jars are hot. They just came out of our canner. So we're going to fill them with a 1/4 inch headspace and get them loaded back up in just a moment. All right, so we are filling our jars to a 1/4 inch headspace. It's got a nice little pink cast to it. I think I like it with the food coloring. All right. Okay, so we've got our jars filled, so now we're going to wipe down our rims with our distilled white vinegar, and then put our lids and rings on them and get them loaded up in the canner carefully because they are hot. And we ended up having enough for 7. I think the recipe said it should make 6 jars. And it filled fully 7, and somehow I spilled a ton of the jelly mix on the counter. Not sure how I did that, but I did. So I probably could have had 7.5, but that's all right. All right. So we've got clean rims so that we shouldn't have any issues with our jar sealing. These are hot. And we're just going to finger tighten these down and get them loaded up. All right. So we are going to load up our canner. Hot water still in the canner. It does have the metal rack in the bottom. Very, very important. And after all your jars are loaded, you should have 1 to 2 inches of water over the top of your jars. That is required for water bath canning. So if you don't have that, boil some water real quick and get it set up. So we are good. We are loaded. Okay. So we're going to close this. We're going to seal it. We're going to leave it on exhaust. And we are going to go to water bath, 5 minutes, and start. Okay. So we are going to watch our canner when we have a steady stream of steam. Anyway, when you've got a lot of smoke coming out, you are going to press the start button, and that's going to start your timer. So you're waiting until it's all boiling before you start your timer. Right? So now we wait. Okay. It's steaming steadily now, so we are just going to come over and hit start, and our 5-minute countdown is on. Our timer's up. So we're going to hit stop. We're going to unplug it. Probably don't even have to hit stop, but that's okay. But it's still got all this pressure built up, so we cannot open it. So we're going to just let it continue to exhaust down until the pressure's gone, and then we're going to take them out and put them on our drying rack. It stopped steaming, so should be able to open it, yep, without any issues. Getting the jar lifter in there around them all is a little tricky, but. So we are going to use the leftovers. There's enough juice left over. Goodness, it is hard to fit this in there to pick these out. There's enough left over to do half a batch. So we are going to do half a batch without the food coloring. So you can see the difference and see if that's a step you want to bother with. Now, the recipe I had, which is from Sure-Gel, who makes the pectin, the recipe I had said 2 drops of red food coloring, but 3 drops came out, so that's what we use. But got a nice little pink cast to them. They haven't all sealed yet, but water bath canning, sometimes it takes a little bit to process, so we will check them again before we go to bed and make sure they've sealed up properly. Otherwise, they go in the fridge. They're still perfectly fine to use. They're just not going to last as long at room temperature. But a couple of them already have, so we'll see in a few hours. We just finished our second half batch. They look like they're the same size. I've already gone through a couple jellies. So, of course, we had to pop one open and try it, make sure it came out right. So I took that one to work and had all my testers check it out. And one of them one of my coworkers demanded a jar to bring home to her husband. So I am down to 5 jars of the original batch, and the leftovers made 4. Still waiting for 1 to pop. They just came out of the canner. 4 of the second batch. I did not use food coloring in the second one. So it's got more of a yellow look to it. So that is completely a personal preference. It doesn't affect the taste or anything like that. So stick with whatever you prefer now that you can compare, right? And that's it. That is guava jelly. Thank you for joining us at Homestead for Life. Please like and subscribe to our channel.